Today, our theme is ensuring data protection and in the context of ITS. We invited the two experts for this webinar. I would like to introduce first speaker, Mr. Zastro. And Kai Zastro is working for the Stellantis, and he is worldwide senior fellow for the regulation, certification, and the standards. And he has been working in the field of the vehicle regulation and certification since 2005. And today's the presentation is related to the vehicle regulation, I think. That's right?
Yes.
And yes, thank you very much. And he is also the spokesman of OICA in the field of the GRRF, and the member of OICA for the Task Force of Cybersecurity and Software Update. And I am looking forward to hearing your presentation. And I would like to give a floor to Mr. Kai Zastro. Yes, please. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Naono-san, for the introduction. I will try to share my screen. I think maybe now I think it's possible. Job. So I think. Okay, I think I share my screen now.
Yes, at least right. I can see you. Yes, thank you, please.
So let me try. Okay, good. So, so my presentation is focused on the automotive cybersecurity regulations. They have been mainly developed within the UN Task Force for Cybersecurity and Software Updates. I remember still the first meeting in London 2016, so it took 5 years to develop those regulations, but now it's finished. You will see the results in my presentation and, of course, the impact of this expertise work in the United Nations. But before we will go to the content of the regulations, why we need a cybersecurity regulation? The first question. Well, there's a risk of cyber attacks, obviously, and those cyber attacks may have a safety, security, and also economic impacts. With regard to safety security impacts, so the hacker may get access to private data, manipulate existing vehicle software. This is one risk. Another risk is that the hacker may use vehicles as weapon for criminal actions or terrorist attacks. The second, fortunately, never happened so far, but in principle, it's a real risk that a hacker could influence a vehicle, let's say the steering or the braking system of a truck. So this is really an issue. It's a real safety and security risk. And of course, also privacy, private data, manipulation of software, it's a real risk for the vehicle user. Economic impact, you can see, is also quite high for cybersecurity in general, but also automotive cybersecurity. And for the vehicle manufacturer, there's also a risk. If we need to recall vehicles, then it's very expensive to recall the vehicle, to update those vehicles. And of course, there's always a image risk for if there are cyber attacks. So this is the issue. And the target of the cybersecurity regulation is to protect the vehicle from cyber attacks. I think this is very clear and easy to understand. There's another related regulation. This is the regulation on software update. So why we need a regulation on software update? Software updates on vehicles can be done during the whole vehicle lifetime, during the whole vehicle use, in order first to ensure safety and security of the vehicle. That means there may be necessity for bug fixes and also for cybersecurity updates. This is a little bit like your personal computer or your smartphone. You need to update it to stay safe, to stay secure and up to date. So we cannot as it was the case 20 years ago, you cannot buy a vehicle and use it during 30 years without any update of the software. This is not possible, as you cannot today buy a computer and use it without any update during 10 years. It's not, there are risks, there are safety risks, security risks, there are some improvements of the software which can be done by bug fix. So this is very important to say that this changed completely for the vehicles. The next point is that we have connected functions on the vehicles more and more, and we need also to update the vehicle to stay compliant with legal acts. For instance, let's take a lane keeping assist or a speed limiter, intelligent speed limiter. He may need to know the traffic rules. And if there are speed signs which change, if the infrastructure changes, if the traffic rule change, we need to update the vehicle that the vehicle can still recognize those signs. So we need to update the vehicle in order to maintain it compliant with legal acts like the traffic rules. That's also new. And this was not the case in the past because there were not so many connected functions on a vehicle. And then there may be other ideas to update a vehicle by adding new functions on the vehicles. Those functions could be pure infotainment. That means without impact on the type approval of the vehicle. But we could also imagine that we add new functions on a vehicle, new ADAS functions, for instance, which have an impact on the type approval of the vehicle. And in this case, of course, they must be covered by new type approvals or extensions of existing type approvals. That means the idea is you have only the right to put new software on an already registered vehicle if this new software is also type approved and covered by a type approval or an extension of an existing type approval. So this is the context. So the target of software update regulation is to ensure that the software of a vehicle is and stays compliant with vehicle homologation during the whole life of the vehicle. So we can update software, be it over the air or by wire. The vehicle has to stay compliant. This is the motivation. Now we come to an overview about the world of standards and regulations and what are the main. You can see we have United Nations, this is the worldwide. We have for regulation, we have ISO, this is worldwide for standardization. We have national discussions, and then we have three big regions in the world, which are European Union, China, and US. So we start United Nations, the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations, where all major countries of United Nations participate, has developed those two UN regulations, UN Regulation 155 on cybersecurity and Regulation 156 on software update. In parallel, ISO has developed two ISO standards. One is the 21434 together with SAE, and it is on cybersecurity engineering. And the second is under development. It's a 24089 on software update engineering. And those two standards are in synergy with the regulations. That means they are not formally required by the regulation text, but they follow exactly the same spirit as the regulations. So they are really a support for the manufacturers, for the suppliers, for everybody to interpret and to apply cybersecurity and software update. So those are the technical standards, which are, of course, more detailed than the regulation, and the regulations which give the global framework. Of course, there are national discussions. I won't go more in detail on the national level. For the European level, there is the Cybersecurity Act. This is a transversal regulation, which is not specific to any sector, and it will be declined for the different sectors. So there will be probably a part for automotive, which will be derived from the General Global Cybersecurity Act. In the European Union, there's a General Data Protection Regulation. That means how you protect the privacy of the users. And there's a Network and Information Security Directive, which is currently being revised. In China, we had already very early a cybersecurity law, we published a few years ago, data security law, the more recent personal information protection law. There are standards, important standards, information security standard by the TC 2060, and very important for the automotive sector under the lead of Qatar. It's in the subcommittee 34, the working group cybersecurity, which develops specific standards or regulations for cybersecurity. And finally, last but not least, in the United States, there is no regulation on automotive cybersecurity, but guidelines from the NHTSA, which gives guidance. So this is the global view, high-level view, and we can say that the two UN regulations, which had already been adopted in June 2020, are worldwide consensus. And they had been developed under the GRVA. This is the group for automated and connected vehicles. The GRVA is chaired by Germany, Japan, and China. And the task force, which had been created in 2016, was chaired by Japan, United Kingdom, and the United States. So it's really an international consensus, let's say, which is now available, which is adopted, and which is enforced. To see more cybersecurity in general, not only for automotive, we have, this is just an example, we have a vehicle with ECUs and networks, internal networks, and all this is not standardized. There's no standardized hardware in a vehicle or standardized architecture. Each vehicle may have different architectures, different number of ECUs, and this is what it makes complicated. And then those ECUs will communicate with the external world. We have on electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicles communication for smart charging. Means with a grid, intelligent communication in two directions. The infotainment systems normally have also external communications, could be via Bluetooth or with other interfaces. There is the OBD port of the vehicle, the onboard diagnostic port, which is very dangerous because it gives access to a lot of things on the vehicle. So it's a high risk for cyber attacks, the OBD port. And there are other communications on vehicles, not on all, but we have vehicle-to-vehicle communication potentially to other vehicles, and also very important, really communication channels via 3G, 4G, tomorrow 5G data communication, which may go to servers which are off board. And cyber attacks may come to any of those channels. So what is very important the message here is to say cybersecurity of a vehicle is not certification of a component. And to be very clear, you cannot say, I have one component, cybersecurity, everything is fine. I need really to certify the vehicle as a whole. So the certification, the type approval will be for the vehicle architecture. The idea is to have one type of type approval, a vehicle type regulation 155, which covers a specific vehicle architecture and all external interfaces to this vehicle. And the cybersecurity measures, they shall be, of course, on the vehicle, but we will see we can also have mitigations in the offboard. That means in the regulation, it is foreseen to mitigate attacks already in the offboard level. We have both. So it's just an example, but it shows a little bit the scope. So the regulation will not give technical solutions. It will not say you have to do this. It will just say you have to ensure that your vehicle architecture is cyber secure. You need to do a risk assessment about the threats, and you need to explain what are the mitigations for each threat, which could be onboard or offboard. The regulation 155 is in two parts. That means the first one is the cybersecurity management system. This is the organization of the vehicle manufacturer. So here the certification is done by audit, and the vehicle manufacturer has to present its internal organization. What are the processes in place to ensure cybersecurity? And the second part of the regulation is really specific to vehicles, to vehicle architectures. And this is what I said, it requires for each vehicle architecture a risk assessment and the implementation of mitigations. Those are the two parts. To give you some more concrete examples without going in details, in the annex of the regulation, there's in the part A, the list of threats, which needs to be covered as a minimum. That means it's really a baseline, a minimum list of threats, which needs to be considered in the risk assessment. In the part B, there is a list of mitigations which shall be done on the vehicle to cover some risk. And then there's part C with mitigations which shall be done outside the vehicle. That means offboard. To continue now, short view also on the UN regulation for software updates. This regulation is structured in three parts. We have a software update management system requirement. This is a little similar as the cybersecurity management system. It means it is a certification out of the organization of the vehicle manufacturer, the process he has put in place in order to trace compliance of software. That it starts from the development of the software, how the software is put on the vehicle, this management global of compliance of software. The second is then the vehicle part. That means requirements really that the software can be updated safely on a vehicle and how the user shall be informed about software updates on the vehicle, especially in the use phase. And as a third part, which is the implementation of a software identification number, is the so-called RxWin, Regulation X software identification number, which can be put in specific regulations, and such a number covers all softwares and software versions on a vehicle which are covered by this homologation. So, for example, I have a homologation for the braking system, let's say, of a vehicle, and there are, of course, different softwares and ECUs who participate onto the braking, ESC, steering, maybe the cluster, the dashboard, information to the customer, and all those softwares can be covered in one unique identification number, which is given at the moment where the vehicle is type approved. And then the different calibrations and versions, they can change. If they do not impact the type approval, we can stay with the same identification number. And only if the software changes with a type approval impact, then we need to make an extension of type approval and update the Regulation X software identification number. This is the principle which permits the software update. So how all this is implemented today and tomorrow. So the two regulations entered into force in January 2021. That means after entering into force, that means all the contracting parties of the 1958 agreement, they can use this regulation in their national type approval if they want. So even some contracting parties require already those regulations. The first was Japan. Japan requires both R155 and 156. It was from the very beginning for all automated vehicles of SAE level 3 and higher, that means autonomous vehicles. And in other steps, you can see here the dates, July 2022, so very soon for new types, and July 2024 for all first registrations. Requirement of both regulations if there are software updates affecting type approval and they are over the air. And in a later state, it is for the other vehicles. So that means all vehicles need at least to fulfill Regulation 155 and some others which have software updates affecting type approval, they need also 156. In the European Union, the cybersecurity had been introduced by the General Safety Regulation. You can see here application dates. So this year for new whole vehicle types, 2 years later for all first registrations in the European market. And the implementation of the software update regulation 156 is currently under preparation. And so it will be normally soon proposed by the European Commission to integrate the mandatory R156 via the framework regulation 2018-858. And of course, other countries of the 1950 agreement should follow in the future. In addition to this, so this is already done, there is the task force of the United Nations has drafted a recommendation on uniform provisions concerning cybersecurity and software updates. Why this? Why this? There are a lot of countries, or there are countries which have no type approval regime. For instance, United States or Canada, and those countries, they cannot use regulations 155 and 156 because they are really based on a technical service who does audits in the company, and this does not work if you have, for instance, self-certification. So this recommendations is a document which has technical requirements, which covers both cybersecurity and software update. It covers the whole life cycle of the vehicle model from design to post-production, and the technical requirements are listed for the vehicle design, for the vehicle, but also for the management systems, and it even considers the concept of the software identification number. So it's a kind of technical requirements which are not a regulation, which are recommendation, and they can be used for all countries that will or do not want to apply directly regulation 155 and 156, but they are technically aligned as much as possible. Those recommendations have been adopted last week by the GRVA, and now we have to follow, of course, the next steps. What will happen now? How will the countries react to this, and how it will be used in the different countries worldwide? So we come to the end of my presentation. What are the opportunities for global harmonization? So the first is, of course, we have the two regulations, 155, 156. We should make sure that all the 54 signatory countries of the UN 1958 agreement apply those regulations and do not invent specific national requirements, because we need harmonization. This is for the sake of the user to have common requirements. It makes it possible to have the same level everywhere, and this makes, of course, this is advantage for the user, for the industry, for the society in general. So it's very important that we get those regulations and not other specific national additional requirements, which would need to have specific vehicles in each country. The second is for the countries that do not apply directly regulation 155 and 156, make sure that they apply at least the recommendations, which are also harmonized, which have harmonized technical requirements. And last important point, there's in China the Subcommittee 34 working group on cybersecurity, which works on cybersecurity standards for China. And of course, they should be as much as possible harmonized with the ISO and standards and the UN regulations to get as much as possible harmonization. Also with China, which is, however, the biggest automotive market worldwide. Okay, with this, I finish my presentation and I'm now open to your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Zastro. I think it is very comprehensive and informative. The information is very helpful for us as well, at least, because we could understand the purpose of the regulation and the history and how to be treated the UN regulation and the guideline into the national or regional regulations. As I know, I think the cybersecurity and the software update regulation is a kind of a new concept. I think especially, as you said, the management system is a kind of a new concept. That's why it is very important to know what is the contents of the importance of that regulation. Thank you very much. And I would like to the time of Q&A, but as I said at the beginning, to the smooth the webinar, I would like to take time for the question and answer after the both presentation was finished. That's why I hope you just please keep connecting.
Okay.
Until yes, thank you very much. Okay. And before going to the second presentation, I had the one administrative question from the hall. That is the such presentation material will be shared or not. The answer is that the after this meeting or seminar, in few days or in few weeks, the UN Secretary will upload the presentation into the UN homepage, and that information will be shared afterwards. That is my understanding. Okay, thank you very much. All right, again, Dastro-san, and so I would like to quickly move to the second presentation, the Mr. Takiridis-san. Thank you very much, the Takiridis-san. And I would like to introduce a little bit the Mr. Takiridis. And he is working for German Federal Ministry for Digital and Transport. And he is responsible for technical requirements for autonomous vehicle in a national context and at the same time, international context. And he was engineering and IT area. That's why he's a proper person to make today's the presentation. He's the very much expert in the area of the IT. Okay, thank you very much. The Kiridi-san, are you ready for the presentation? I will give the floor to the Takiridi-san. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nono-san. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I would like ask the secretary to share the presentation. So.
Sorry, one moment, please. Sorry, Mr. because I made you a presenter and I'm having issues taking that privilege away from you to share my screen. So just give me two. I don't understand what's happening.
No problem.
I think you should be able to share directly your screen.
Now I've changed it. Can you please let me know if you can see my screen okay?
Yes, now it's.
Is it correct?
Yeah, just full screen and it works fine.
So Melissa, I think you need to go in paramètres d'affichage in French on the top. And you can switch the screen. You know, the first one, not the first one. Yes.
Is it okay?
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Sorry.
So thank you again. Thank you for letting me have this presentation on the context of IT security and vehicle type approval. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you, Nono-san. And also thank you, Mr. Kai Sastro, for the presentation. And there also from the topic many similarities also in this presentation, so we can combine the presentations for the topic of IT security. Next slide, please. So in this, the content of this presentation will be, main focus will be the type approval and also IT security. And further on the UN regulation 155, which also we heard before in the last presentation. So the special challenges of information security will also be addressed, and this will be also a different type of thinking about this topic, because information security differs from the classical parts of vehicles and vehicle approval systems. Therefore, there will be a focus and also a change of thinking for this new upcoming topics. And these topics also evolve fast in the forms of digitalization and also automation, and will be in the future important to solve and also to target. Next slide, please. First of all, we should cover the life cycle of the vehicle type. This is important to understand where the type approval fits in this life cycle. So if you have a development or a design of a new vehicle type, this comes from the manufacturer, then it goes over a maturity phase, and before entering the market, it needs a type approval if it's not self-certificated. And here we have the technical requirements of the UN or the Europe type approval. And here we see the regulations which have to be met to let the vehicle type go to the market. After this, we have the market surveillance, which watches the type approval, the vehicle type and the market environment. And after this, we have the decommissioning process. And so after this is complete, a new development of a new vehicle type can start also parallel, for example. And this is the important life cycle of vehicle type. And also in the context of software, we have to address also this development in the software point of view. So we have also for software these different phases and how they implement and can be, for example, also in the market surveillance object addressed correctly. Next slide, please. So now from the German point of view, we have three different parts. We have the international body with the UNECE based on the 58 agreement and 98 agreement. We have the European Union part with the regulation 2018/858, and we have the national part, which is in the StVCO, ZO, and StVG, and mostly it's aimed to handle this process for harmonization. It's more sufficient to make it on the international or European level. So to achieve a harmonization for vehicle type approval systems, for example, it's the UNECE and the European Union are the favorite parts to address these issues. And the main issue is to ensure safety in road traffic and protection of the environment. Next slide, please. So we have here a typical approval process in Germany. I will not go in detail to this process. Just want to mention that here we see that it's a long process till we take the certificate of conformity, which means also this process has to be issue with the parts of software. So now also software and software updates, for example, come in this process, which has been proven for long times, and software has to also be an initial assessment, has also be in the documents be addressed correctly, and it changes somehow from a mechanical point of view mostly in this process to a IT focus now for these regulations to a IT point of view. And it's important to think about also that once a vehicle type is approved, it stays approved. So which means that every part of this process have to fit the requirements accordingly. So also software security is ensured in the first place, and also in the future that there will be also no critical risks regarding this topic. Next slide, please. And here we have also the special challenges and threats for IT security and also data. And I would like to mention that data is different. So if you compare it with other parts of mechanical, for example, parts or electronic parts, data and software is different. For example, there's no set it and forget it in IT security, which means always it's evolving. The threats are evolving. The dangers, the status, the software, the possibilities, the processing unit, for example, everything is evolving. So we have to keep with this progress, and also to look forward what's coming next. And also data, if data has been stolen, can be hard. It's hard to be to detect, which means in the physical world, if something is stolen or missing, normally somebody can see it and can react to it. In software, it's not just such. Also for data, it's not just such easy, which means it might happen and nobody maybe notice it. And also this means that afterwards it can rarely be recovered, which means when it's gone, the trace to follow where it goes, it's not such easy to find, and therefore it's even more important to watch the communication, for example, to watch the different parts of the vehicle where this can happen, if like the OBD and other parts, that it's ensured that it's not missing. And more, we have also security requirements, which vary for different types of data. So we have important safety relevant data, like for steering, for brakes, which is highly important and should be protected the most. And we have also other types of data, which is also important, but not in a such critical point of view. And also there are different threats which can arise. For example, if a vehicle system stolen, for example, or the access is achieved from other parties, it means that the operation could take problems, for example, or can manipulate it in a way that the car is driving or in a way that it's not normal, let's say. And also, for example, another example is the threats which is not typically in mind is, for example, GPS data. If it's stolen, for example, people who did this, for example, know where the car is driving and where it's going. So with this data, they know exactly not just about the car, where the car is moving, also about the driver, what's the current position of the driver, and where he is, where he is not. If he is not home, for example, that they are also there in the physical world some threats which can be a threat for this whole around the vehicle environment, let's say so. And the stolen data is also used for identity theft, which means that the increasing amount of personal data is also a threat, because it's meant to be personal and private in most cases by different regulations, and not used for other purposes like marketing or other points. Next slide, please. So here we have also, as mentioned in the last presentation, the UN regulation 155, which is mostly addressed three different parts, which is the first part is on the OEM level, the cybersecurity management system. On the second level is on the vehicle level is the risk assessment and mitigation measures, and on the third level is the fleet. On the fleet level, it's the market surveillance topic. This all is inserted in the UN regulation 155 and is regulated accordingly and so documented accordingly. And on the next slide, we go now on this topic on detail. Next slide, please. Yes, there's the cybersecurity management system. We have it's mostly there to manage cyber risks throughout the operational lifetime of the vehicles. This is on the side of the manufacturer and has to be approved by the authorities. On the second part, we have the risk assessment and mitigation measures, which we also heard before. These are concrete measures which have to taken, which have to be evaluated, like a man-in-the-middle attack, for example, or a denial of service attack, which is the minimum measures which have to be addressed to ensure cybersecurity for the vehicle. And then we have also the market surveillance, which means once the vehicle is type approved and on the roads, that we still have some surveillance organizations or surveillance part to check if all the parts before are still in work. Next slide, please. So we have here the different parts for the implementation of the UN regulation. We have first the Federal Motor Transport Authority, which is in Germany the KBA, which is mostly for the type approval. It's the type approval authority. Then we have for the Federal Office for Information Security, which is the BSC in Germany. This is for mostly the most competent center for information security in Germany. And we have also the technical services and also the vehicle OEMs, which are involved parties, and all the parties have to work together to achieve a sufficient type approval. Next slide, please. So now we come on the impact of IT security on road traffic. So this means that secure information is key, and it's also a basis for further points and applications. For example, we have it's required for safe participation in public traffic. So this means also it's necessary. So if the car is not safe in a IT security or data security aspect, also following parts are not secure. So this is a key important step to ensure from ongoing parts of development in the vehicle, and also like for example, the vehicle-to-vehicle communication. If the car is secure, also communication based on the secure car can be addressed accordingly. Because if the car is in the first place not secure, also the communication can be fragmented and not in place. And this is important for the future development of vehicles like cooperative, connected, and automated vehicles or mobility. And also, it's also necessary to secure access in the in-vehicle data. Again, if the vehicle is secure, also the access to in-vehicle data further on can be addressed accordingly. So these are key. The cybersecurity and the IT security measurements are key important points to secure ongoing developments on the car topic, like vehicle-to-vehicle communication, access to in-vehicle data, and so on. So next slide, please. So thank you for your attention, and I would like to wish you everyone a good day, a good morning, and a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Takiji-san. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I think it is very impressive and a detailed explanation, implementation in Germany. And I recognize that there is a lot of the challenging area and the threat in the traffic the environment for the cybersecurity. It's very impressive the presentation. Then we had two presentations. Both of them was very important topics. And I would like to pick up some questions from the floor. But unfortunately, we have some maybe 5 or more minutes. So unfortunately, I cannot pick up all of the questions. But I would like to take 1 or 2 questions. And one is the question for not only the vehicle, but also the traffic environment. The question was, the regulation, we understand the regulation, cybersecurity regulation in the vehicle level, but how about the other area than the vehicle? That is including a telecom provider or an antenna or connection. And if possible, Mr. Takijis, you are the Ministry of Transport and Telecommunication, Digital Communications. So if you have some answer to that question, please make a reaction to that. Possible?
Yes, thank you, Nono-san. So the question is how on the telecommunication part, the security is also secured. We in the ministry, we focus mostly in the type approval on the vehicle side. So the telecommunication part, there's also other standardizations in charge for that, let's say. So, but still the vehicle also vehicle to infrastructure communication. There's some new links from the infrastructure from the telecommunication networks, which are still in progress to be solved in the vehicle type. So it's just a start. The V2V communication, V2I communication, just a start. And also this topic and this question fits perfectly because we see new parts from other sides which also have to be addressed in the future. But as it is for now, there's no regulation which covers all topics for sure.
Okay, thank you very much, Takiji-san. And I'd like to pass the same question to the Zastro-san.
Yeah.
I understand that you were the expert of the area of the vehicle manufacturers, but I think the industry vehicle manufacturer has contact with the other environmental the industry. That's why if you have some idea to react to that.
So of course, there are not only automotive regulations on cybersecurity. There are a lot of other regulations on cybersecurity which are more or less advanced. So you have seen my presentation. For instance, in the European Union, there's the Cybersecurity Act. It's a really high-level framework regulation which will be derived for the different sectors. So also as well outside automotive. There's a general data protection regulation. It's the same, like similar to China and other countries, and this applies also to all those other sectors, of course. So telecom providers, any other, you have the privacy of the consumers protected via those transversal data protection regulations, and they apply to all sectors, not only automotive and everything. So it's also true for your smartphone. So there are, of course, other regulations in place, and also the Network and Information Security Directive in the EU applies not only for automotive, but all those networks information systems. So I think, yes, in principle, there are other regulations either already in place, but also under development to secure cybersecurity. And maybe I see another question which goes a little bit in the same thing. It's, would you say that the regulation R155 and the ISO are sufficient to ensure cybersecurity? Because it's a good question. I think the point is we have to see where we come from. Until now, there is no requirement from a regulation point of view on automotive cybersecurity today. If you sell a car, you don't have yet, it will come soon into force and be used, but today it's not yet mandatory. So, but we have cyber attacks, of course. Vehicles, they have cyber attacks. They are attacked by different people. So the vehicle manufacturer have already put in place cyber security measures, even without a regulation. So this is not new. All vehicles have a certain level of cybersecurity today. And I think we see that today the situation is not dramatic. So there are not there may be some problems, but it's not really, as I said, never any terrorist has used a vehicle as a weapon. And this, despite the fact that there is no regulation. So I think there is a certain level of cybersecurity today already, even without regulation. Now, with those new regulations and standards, it will become mandatory to get the type approval. This is the next step. With the application of the regulation and of the standard, and this will show whether it's sufficient. So of course, we can never say it's 100% sufficient, but what is new, there will be a regulation, and this is already a big step forward, that you are not allowed to sell a car if you don't have the cybersecurity type approval, which is a quite complex thing. And I think the next steps have to be seen then from the experience.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jastro-san and Takiji-san. I think the question, the regulation is sufficient or not, is very good question. But at least I think the regulation is essential part of, and the cyber risk is getting bigger and bigger. That's why the regulation will follow that way, that the risk, I think. And when I see the clock, unfortunately, we do not have enough time to pick up every question. That's why I would like to stop this Q&A. If possible.
Yeah, I think there are two questions where the answer is very easy. I can just very quick. So one is, if the vehicle manufacturer does not have automated vehicles, does he need R156? So the answer is R156 applies to all connected vehicles. So if the vehicle is connected, you need the R156. It has nothing to do with automation. So even vehicles which have no autonomous driving and no others, if they are connected vehicles, they are in the scope of regulation 156. And there's another question, shall the vehicle conform to both at the same time, R155 and R156? And the answer is, it depends on the country. Each regulation is independent. So you can get a type approval only for R155 or only to R156. It's possible. And it's each country to say whether they require both at the same time or not at the same time. So you can see Japan, for example, requires both already on some categories. European Union, they will start with cybersecurity, and the software will come later in the second step. So it's up to each country to decide when they want to apply which regulation. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Jastro-san, for your quick answer to the question. It's very kind. Yes, as you said, Japan has take the both the regulation, and it is independently that they can get certification separately. I think that Germany is the same situation, I think. And again, thank you very much, Jastro-san and Takiji-san, for your very impressive presentation. And I would like to thank to the other co-chairs, Ms. Doherty from US and Mr. Yarnold from UK, for your usual support. And thank you for the Secretariat for the good preparation. And thank you very much for the audience for the joining today. Finally, I would like to inform the information regarding the next session of this webinar. The third session, which is will be the final session for the time being, will be held on 28th of February. The theme is V2V and V2 infrastructure communication. And the UN Secretary will provide some information in a few weeks. And as I said before, the presentation material of today will be uploaded into the homepage of the UN regulation. Francois, is it right? Okay.
Yes, this is correct. We will put them on the wiki page under the informal group on ITS. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And on third session, I am sure that we can have some excellent presentation as well. So I hope that everybody can join on the 28th of February on third session. Again, thank you very much for the presenter, and thank you for all for joining today. And this is time, so see you again at third session, and I wish you have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.